The name Genesis was born, I remember, the money came really from drugs. Because of my entrepreneurial spirit, I liked the idea of being able to put on dances. Philip Magnus could be described as the breeding ground for criminals. An incident threatened to stab one of the teachers with a screwdriver.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Marvin Herbert's Nothing But The Truth podcast, hosted by myself, Christian Morgans. As always, we've got another fantastic guest who's kindly invited us down to his home today. Today we're joined by Andrew Pritchard. Thank you for having us to your home today, Andrew, and thank you for taking the time.
It's a pleasure.
To do this. How are you?
I'm well.
So, if possible, with our guest, we'd like to go back to the start of the story, so then we can see the journey to where you are today, if possible. So don't go too far in depth, but whereabouts were you brought up, and tell us a little bit about your childhood, if possible.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Going back, I can't really start with my journey. I have to start with my parents' journey, because that's what makes people who they are, where they're coming from. And my parents basically were a unique couple. My mother, she came from Jamaica. She came over to this country. It was 1952. That was 3 years after the Windrush had set sail, came over here. At that time, she was 19 years old. To make a journey like that would have been like literally saying to someone, travel to the moon, would have been very frightening. But she was brave. She had very little. I wanted to make a positive life for herself. She was married before in Jamaica to her first husband, who made that journey a year before, and he was over here. So she came over, basically. She, at that time, 1952 was quite a significant year in terms of Caribbean history, because people talk about the Windrush generation, the influx, but the biggest influx of Jamaicans coming to this country was around, like, back then was 52, 53. For two reasons. Number one, there was something called Hurricane Charlie, which hit the island, which was devastated the island, and literally the place was, trashed. And secondly, the Americans had passed through a bill. I can't remember the exact name of the act, but basically it passed through Congress, and it stopped immigration from the Caribbean into America. So more people then were funneled towards England via Canada in many cases, because Canada was obviously a British colony and you had the blue passport and they could exit there. That was my mother's journey. She took a flight to Canada and took a boat over to England. When she got here, she settled with her husband, who worked in the building trade. It was a very abusive relationship. She was a bad wife, and she was very ambitious. That was the greatest thing about her. And her ambition grew, and her aspiration was to always own property. And what kind of kick that was, at that time, Jamaicans and Caribbeans lived in very bad conditions. They were notorious, terrible landlords, and after the Second World War, where a rate cap was put into place, that was lifted. So it meant that people who came over would share a room 3-1, £1 a head. It was a lot of money, and there were terrible conditions. And I remember the story being told to me. Two of her friends came over one day, and they had managed to get some coconuts from the local market, Ridley Road. They took them back to the house. They were trying to break them open on the steps, and the Jewish landlord heard about it. He got his irie up and he kicked everyone out, everyone in the whole house, and they were all evicted. Nowhere to go, suitcases on the doorstep, and she made a promise to herself that day she would become a homeowner. And she toiled away, and they eventually bought their first house, which was Homedale Terrace, and that became headquarters, so to speak, for West Indians coming over. So she became her own landlord and rented rooms and looked after her own people, and that was something that kind of, she made her mark. She then created what was a local partner system. At that time, West Indians coming over couldn't get bank accounts for a number of reasons. I think more than anything else, it was height of racism. Because they did have jobs. They worked at London Transport, they worked at NHS, and they worked really hard, and they did have steady wages, but banks weren't exactly lending the money to black people. That's how it worked. So it's impossible to get on a property ladder, set up your own business, have a vehicle. And she overcome that by having a partner system as a trusted member of the community. Each week a number of people would throw what they call a hand, part of their wages. They would put that together, and each person would, in circle receive a lump sum, which was the deposit for many houses, many cars, many businesses. So with the pardon system, that grew the local community, so she was very respected. My father was equally respected. He was an East End boy. Came from a big family out of Oxton. Him and his brother-in-law had a paraffin route. The paraffin route was basically selling paraffin oil all over East and North London. Him and his brother-in-law. And one evening they had a friend, a guy called Billy Hill. Not the Billy Hill from West London, but a Jamaican guy, and his wife Sadie. My dad used to sell him paraffin, and he established a route within certain areas and sold dominantly to the West Indian community. And Billy invited him to a party, and equally my dad went to the party with his brother-in-law and met my mum. My mum was coming out of a divorce at that time. My mum and my dad got on incredibly well from the beginning. And that was the start of them. Billy wanted to open a club. It was his dream to do a club. There was never going to get a dance license. My dad agreed to be the director of that club, and they opened First West Indian Music Club at 60 Green Lanes, which was before the Marquee and before the Roaring Twenties and the clubs that people have historically, said to be the first clubs. But so that was the first one. My mum and dad lived above the club, and they basically grew as a couple. They bought their first property in 1962. They got to in 58, and my sister was born in 63. I was born in 66. They grew. My dad was a builder. He was a master builder, as was his father. The skill was handed down. He could lay 1,000 bricks a day, which is described as a domino. For those people who don't know, a house, a 4-bedroom house, typically consists of around 5,400 bricks. So effectively, he could build a house a week. So he was a prolific worker and prolifically talented. And given those skills and given the hard work ethic, my parents then started to buy property and rent it. And that was how they got, tried to get ahead, but very humble, very grounded, and very much, caring about the community. And that was where it was. I was born in 1966 in North London, youngest, only son, and I was a good child, started off that way. Very much only boy, really looked after, really idolised, and I kind of, it was strange because at that time, when I was young, we never understood the whole mixed race thing, because mixed race thing, understand, was really almost the first generation of mixed race kids, and we had definitely more black influence than white in terms of cousins and relatives, because that was what it was then. You grew up knowing your cousins, whether they were cousins or not. You were dropped off Auntie and Uncle's house if babysitters didn't exist. No. So the house was a hub of activity. On a Saturday, I remember, Ridley Road Market would be heaving. My mum, she was, every true word, a real entrepreneur. They turned the basement of the house into a boutique. Used to get what they call cabbage clothes, which were when the factories used to produce dresses for people like Freeman's Catalogue. A certain amount of material was sent to the factory to produce a certain amount of dresses. There'd be, material left over on a cloth. They'd turn those into dresses. My mum would have gone out in the factory. She'd buy the dresses. She'd then obviously use the catalogue, which they'd be using for their summer or their winter's collection, and she would sell the dresses to West Indian women who would be going out and to weddings or to their Saturday night blues dance, and she had a thriving business. So from a young age, my mum always wanted me to have money, so she used to let me count money. So she used to, whatever it was, put money in my hands and say to me, if you count money, you'll understand the value of it and you'll have it. And that was, call it a wise wife tale, call it whatever it is, but in a strange way, a lot of money's passed through my hands over the years. Yeah,
so we can see where you certainly instilled with the entrepreneurial gene from your mum. You instilled that in you, and obviously showed you. So that was inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so you say you were a good child and stuff? You didn't get in any trouble at school? You didn't?
I think I went to a local primary school, which was Princess May, and that was more or less a hub of activity. A lot of children of immigrants were there. It was very multicultural, to say the least. It was very active. I then moved from there to a school not too far, which was school St Jude's. Quite ironically, St Jude's is the patron saint of lost causes. I should have seen it coming. Yeah. And it was around about then, prior to going into secondary school, around about sort of, what was it, age 11, 12, I started to spike a little bit. And even though I wasn't bad, really, I played football, enjoyed football, wasn't incredibly good, but I stuck me in goal, became a reasonably good goalkeeper. And, I kind of, I fitted in like most kids. I wasn't incredibly bright at school, I wasn't academic, do you know what I mean? I wasn't, that kid that was a genius. I just understood what money was, understood what hard work was, and, had quite a free spirit.
So what were you planning on being when you're older? What were you dreaming to be?
I think, like most kids, like coming from, like, a Saturday or a midweek, was sat in the back garden. If I couldn't afford to get a ticket to watch Arsenal, what we used to do was sit in the back garden with a radio playing, keeping up to the football, and then when they scored, you'd have a delay from the football ground, so the old Highbury Stadium, you'd turn the radio and you could hear the cheers, and you'd imagine yourself, be at that time the team was, as people like Malcolm McDonald, Supermac they used to call him, and Liam Brady, and Pat Rice, and this was the Arsenal team back then. And you aspire to want to become, the Arsenal player, to be playing at Highbury. But of course, we have our limitations, and my limitations were drawn to playing football in the back garden. Not much beyond that.
Yes. And so, did you finish your secondary school?
When I went to secondary school, me and most of my friends in that group, we went to Philip Magnus, which was a school in King's Cross. It was, if you can describe Oxford or Cambridge as a hub for barristers and lawyers and people of that kind of standing, Philip Magnus could be described as the breeding ground for criminals. Most of the popular criminal families attended that school, even older years. And finally, they closed the school down to amalgamate it with Highbury Grove. That was, I think it was 11, something like that, 12. I was about 14 years old when it happened, and my mum wanted to move me ahead of the move. So she bought a house out in Chinkford. The deal was I was going to move out to Chinkford, and they put me into school in Edmonton. Well, that didn't work. Arsenal supporter going into tight for Tottenham, that was never going to happen. Secondly, I'd now started to had a group of friends that were my pals, and I just couldn't resettle. So it came to a crossroads in my life. What it meant was that I stopped going to school. So I would go there in the morning, and then I would take the 73 bus, I think it was 149 bus, down from Edmonton straight down to Stoke Newington, where a friend of mine, his brother, had a sound system, and I used to go there every day, and we used to watch him build speaker boxes, play music, and I had a love for music, but it grew, and I started then to move deeply in what could be described as the sound system, movement of that particular time. So that was basically introduction to being rebellious, to not going to school, and then moving in those circles. What it meant was, obviously, drugs were becoming available, not hard drugs, marijuana, weed was the thing. So began to smoke weed, but more importantly, because of my entrepreneurial spirit, I liked the idea of being able to put on dances. So back then, we were young kids. We thought, okay, great idea. You go into a squat, you've got a sound system, you set up, you charge £3 bit with getting, you buy some tins of Tennant Super, a couple of cases of those, some brandy, things like that, and you sell a makeshift bar out of the kitchen. But it was an unusual thing because West Indians were doing this since the 1950s. So this was pretty much something I tapped into and I'd done. But it was taking me down a wrong road because obviously the people that would attend blues dances and shebeens, and being a young person, you're easily influenced, and you're now looking at role models and people probably ain't the best people in the world to associate yourself with. But at the time, it's something I wanted to do, and I thought I'd actually making money out of it, which very little money. It was all spent back buying sound system equipment and speakers and records. So I started on that path. My mother desperately tried to get me off of it. Attempts were made to put me into college. She had a job at British Telecom, which was the old post office at that time, in the canteen serving food, and she, begged brother and still to get me a job there as an apprenticeship as an BT engineer. I went to college in Bun Hill Row 3 days a week. Didn't really get on. Had an incident, threatened to stab one of the teachers with a screwdriver. I was kicked out of there. Back on the rails, again my sister went and begged Waltham Forest College to take me back in, and same sort of turnout happened there. Another ridiculous incident. In fact, it was so embarrassing because my behaviour was so unruly and ridiculous. The lecturer called me in and said to me, "Are you on drugs?" And I basically said yes, and I wasn't really on drugs, but I said I was. He said, "What sort of drugs?" I said heroin, which was a complete lie. And of course, he was devastated by this, called my parents up. I had to tell my parents before what I'd said, and they were completely embarrassed, humiliated by the whole thing, but they had to go along with it. Anyway, I noticed he'd been through my locker, he'd broke the locker, looking for drugs. It was real tough. This guy was really concerned, genuinely concerned, that, a young person could be on such hard drugs. And my parents had to go up to the bloody college, embarrass themselves and go along with this story. Eventually they took me out of college, but actually, believe it or not, passed me all the exams. And what I did learn from it, I learned about electronics, about building more speakers, more amplifiers. So all I used that for was to service my knowledge to bring the sound system further forward. And I guess that was more or less at that point I started to get off the rails.
Yes. So as much as your parents tried, they didn't manage to get you back onto any sort of straight path, and
you're gone. That's the problem.
And then it sort of turned into. Then talk to us about how it all transitioned into the illegal raves and stuff. Like what age were you when they sort of started coming around? Or
well, that come a little bit later, because obviously the sound system era.
Yeah.
Kind of was about 83. Again, I was very, very young, 14, 15 years old, and the music was different. It was lovers rock. I emerged musically further into the music thing, and I started to DJ, put on events, different styles of music. But before I got there, I again was delinquent, completely unruly. I moved around with a crew of guys at the time. The in thing was steaming, so what you'd do is a group of you would steam through crowds, breaking people's chains, robbing, real not nice stuff, really scummy kind of stuff.
Did you know what I was going to say? I interrupted you there, because I was going to ask you a minute ago about the sound splash things, right? Because there's a bit of not controversy, so to speak, but a lot of people like taking credit for that steaming stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I remember everyone used to say over West London they was responsible for the steaming, right? But the first steaming that I remember was with Bart, Andy, right, at the Sunsplash.
That was the home of the steaming. That was the biggest thing. We'll get to that story as well. We'll get to that story. And as Marv just said, steaming was a thing. There were guys that savage. There was different crews around that used to do the steaming. And the football used to do it as well. They used to go through, we was playing abroad and go through the shops, loot.
Well, that's where I learned by mimicking all the older lot, and I took it into the younger lot. And like we done the carnival and stuff like that.
And that was steaming. And basically, anyway, so I got a nicking for that. I got 18 months.
Hey, but that was, hold on one second, that's robbing persons unknown of substance unknown.
Correct.
That's what they should nick up for.
That's correct.
So that was quite a harsh charge, sorry to interrupt. It's got 18 months. Obviously, you must have been arrested prior to that then, or...
No, that was it. First hit.
First
that was
hit,
my
18
first offence they'd actually catch him before.
Well, it's quite obviously a horrible crime, but yeah.
Well, it was, what happened was, as he pointed out...
Have you ever seen the steaming? Have you ever watched it? Right. No. Just imagine, 25 hard nuts, just running through, do you know the tube?
Yeah, I've heard
from one end of the tube, from one end of the train to the other end of the train, running through every carriage, robbing every single person for everything. I mean, and then getting off when the train stops, you're jumping off and fucking off. Do you know what I mean? But
so effectively, it's described as street robbery, basically. Okay, so as he says, moving through the streets, robbing. It's not a nice thing.
I was always robbing persons unknown of articles unknown.
Because you're grabbing stuff. Yeah.
So you never knew what you was nicking, or they never knew what was nicking.
It was a roller coaster. That is why it was a steam. It was like through.
So I got my first 9 months for that as well.
Yeah.
Both of you the same sort of things.
Yeah.
Similar stories. So you've got 18 months.
Well, what he said was at that time, again, because of my mum and my dad standing in local community, people they knew, a lot of people they brought over and helped come to the country, and settle, and had a lot of extended family. And one of my uncles, extended family, he actually had brought Sunsplash here, which is a huge music festival. And as Marvin said, it was a great festival. They had 2 great concerts at Crystal Palace, and then they had another one at Clapham Common. And that was the biggest festival in the world that year.
Was it 1985, 96?
1987.
Was it 97?
87. And what happened at that event was the game changer, because steaming had happened in areas like Brixton, Stoke Newton, Hackney. It was generally happening a lot, but Sunsplash was the first event where it was done on a truly massive scale. I think about 800, 900 people were robbed. It was insane. And the government, they said, there's no way this event's ever going to happen in an open space ever again. So it was the same sort of time that I, went to jail for that. I went to Chelmsford. Never forget the first day in Chelmsford. When I arrived there, it was a horrible prison. You arrived there, you're thrown into a cell. There's no sink, there's no toilet. It was what they called old slopping out.
Piss bucket.
You used to have a piss bucket. If people would shit their throat through the window in the newspaper. In the morning, the screw would come round, banging the cell door, the truncheon. You'd walk down to the end of the landing. You'd throw out your piss in a slop out, they called it. You'd go downstairs, down the massive metal stairs. You used to have a metal tray back then. You'd get a blob of butter, 2 slices of bread, boiled egg, rash of bacon, a tea full of bromide, and that was it. Back to your cell, and that was prison. And then
was you sort of accepted or treated as white or black in prison?
That's strange, because it's who you hang around with. And when I left Chelmsford, I went to Warren Hill, which is now a lifeless prison.
I done my first birthday as well.
Which is now a lifeless prison, but yeah, it was a brand new prison at the time. First sort of prisons in now, and my crowd was black, so I was the complexion I am, but very much so black. Bargy was in with me. Bargy done sentence with me, but Bargy does sentence as well. And that's Bargy's first sentence. And that's where it was. And I'll never forget. Time was spent listening to David Rodigan's Roots Rockers on a Saturday night at old Roberts.
He would have been
Rambler.
Fresh over here then, wouldn't he, Bargy? He was probably Jamaican.
He just came over. Just arrived, Bargy. Yeah, just arrived. And Roots Rockers, Tony Black used to have a soul show in the afternoon, so I used to listen to that. So when I came out of jail, music was, where I was going to be going.
And so when you came out of jail, or when you're in jail, what was your mindset? Were you thinking about, right, I don't want to get in any trouble again? Was there thoughts of...
Everyone does. In your first sentence, unless you're a complete fucking idiot, what tends to happen, you're young, and you do try to think to yourself... And it was quite, 18 months is quite a sentence to get your first you know, out and out the door. Do you know what I mean?
And that was 2/3 back then as well, wasn't it?
2/3. Luckily, I got my first parole because it was 2/3, but you could get first parole. Yeah. But because obviously I towed the line, I got my first parole. So I think I was done 8 months. Anyway, I came out of jail. Of course, my mum and dad this time, we had a shop off licence. That's what made it worse to get nicked for something like that when you've got a business where kids are steaming it anyway. It was a real embarrassment for them.
So it was famous, that off licence song.
It was famous off licence. Everyone knew actually one corner.
It was, someone said to me the other day, was that Andy Pritchard with the off licence? I was like, yeah.
That was a shop everyone knew you don't fuck around there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That was the corner, you know. And so I came out of jail. My mum and dad desperately wanted me not to go back to prison, and I felt sorry for them, the journeys they had to make up to Hollesley Bay, what I got moved to after they're 4-0.
Norwich.
Ipswich, weren't it? Right down in Surrey, that's near Norwich. And I decided I was going to go and help them in the off licence as a side deal. It was like,
so was it the call into?
Well,
you wanted to show them your love, and
it was a bit of a gimmick for me as well, because they said I could have some video stands in there, which I said I would put the video stands in there, which I'd done. I had 2 wheeling video stands, and it was a good little business because the customers coming in, buying their wine, joining the video club, and then suddenly, and I'll never forget it. It's funny because on the road, in the corner of the road, a guy called Richie lived. He lived with Adam. You knew him probably as Adamski, the keyboard player with Seal. And Adam, I wasn't even involved in music at the time, but he used to come in, and one day he's coming to me, with Richard, like, can you get any weed? I thought, here we go. So I thought, yeah, of course I can. So what I then started to do was I realised that if I got weed, I could start selling the video customers weed. So they was going innocently behind my mum and dad's back, my sister, buying a bottle of wine, they're buying a video, boom, bit of weed. And that was it. I could have brought the whole shop down, basically, right? But I was trying to be good, but I just couldn't help it. And then where it all changed, the game changer, I never forget, it was one, I think it was Sunday afternoon in 1987, or was it 87? Yeah, 88 actually, yeah. 3 friends walked in who lived on local estate Trowbridge, and they said, one of them's having a party, and and I've got the sound system, can I come and play there? So I said, yeah, not a problem. So I went down, played the thing and all that, and started playing. It was rare grooves to play. And they were there, it got any acid? I was like, what? It got any acid records? I'm like, acid records? So what the fuck's acid? Anyway, I played the set, played a couple of tracks, S Express, remember that was one of the first ones, and Gwen McRae, Love That I'm Giving, so mixed in blend, but the few people that were really fucking that I'm giving, got it? Really hyper. And I thought, wow, anyway, came back in next week, listen, we're putting on a party this time, can you do the sound? So I said, not a problem. So this was Oxford House, this was at the back of Bethnal Green. So I've turned up there, put the whole thing, set up a system. Anyway, I've got my music, but they've got their own DJ. So I said, okay, fair enough. He's called Marvin from Pulf Records. It was in Commercial Road. So anyway, we kicked off. They started, the place was heaving. It was packed within the space of an hour. They just tipped out of somewhere else. And I'd never seen anything like it. They were taking their shirts off, they were pouring in sweat, they were like that in the air. I see. And I thought, what the fuck? And I literally left that place just thinking, what has gone on? It was the maddest thing. I was as straight as a die. I'm thinking, what was that all about? Anyway, got paid, lovely. They said, listen, can you do a party for us next Friday? I thought, yeah, of course can. That was, I think, there was a series of parties. I think it might have been Cleveland Way, but yeah, done the party at Cleveland Way. They asked to do a party on a Saturday. I'm getting £500 a night here. And like £1,000 a week.
Good money back in that day.
30 years ago, £1,000 a week.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought to myself, I've just hit the jackpot. And I was doing these massive warehouse parties, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They look massive, they're getting bigger. And as they started to go on, I thought, I'm going to have to try, what is this fascination? What is he? So I said, all right, we'll go out one night. We went to Spectrum, which was at the old Heaven Club, which was a Charing Cross.
Under the arches.
Went down there. I bought an E. I actually had it given to me, right? Anyway, I thought, okay, take drugs. My culture's black. Yeah, you know, them days, black guys ain't taking tablet. You're smoking weed. Even sniffing cocaine weren't really something we done. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, dropped this pill and it didn't come on me. It did come on me in the club. I mean, everything sounded amazing. The lights seemed amazing. The sound seemed amazing. Everyone was euphoric. And then I got it. I just got it. This is why these people are doing this. And this is something that I've never experienced in my life. And obviously the drug is the thing that drove that scene. And I become part of that scene. And I started to take the drugs because, you know, I was part of the scene. And we done parties, and where my background was sound system, I wasn't frightened to break into warehouses. We broke into houses anyway and done blues. You know, this was a normal thing. To most legitimate or half legitimate people, they wouldn't even think about putting the sound system or turning up, breaking off a door. But to me, it was nothing. And we started doing parties. Yeah,
what you got to do as well is, because a lot of new viewers or people that are watching this podcast might not understand that back then there was so many vacant houses and buildings. I mean, it wasn't like you wouldn't there'd be like maybe on a row of 30 shops there'll be like 7 or 8 of them that would spark out empty, or maybe 9 or 10 of them. Do you know what I mean? And there'd be a shop, vacant, shop, vacant, shop, vacant, shop, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So buildings for squatting was life.
Yeah,
yes.
he's
Britain was going for a tough time.
Well, he's just actually hit the nail on the head, which is a very, very important thing that I should have actually mentioned. It was Thatcherism, and what had happened was basically you'd had the massive boom in the stock markets and the whole yuppie revolution. And what was happening was basically the areas like Hackney, all these areas were really deprived. People had factory jobs, the factories are getting closed down, so there were vacant properties, vacant warehouses, and there was a general feeling of despair with a lot of young people. And warehouse parties gave them something to go to, express themselves. Once they paid, took a pill, they were there, and that was it. They forgot about everything. And it's weird because the areas over that period of that year, or 18 months or so, because that was the real important time, areas like Oxton, Shoreditch, you know, these areas people wouldn't go to, you know. So if it hadn't been for the warehouse parties bringing those people into those areas, these wouldn't be the social trendy hubs that they are today. You know, people cited those.
Sandringham Road.
People took sight of them, and they went into them.
Remember,
and they went now.
Penn Street, we used to go over Penn Street. Hoxton.
Yes, it's funny how things have changed today. Like say, where Shoreditch has become the place for partying.
It's the hub. It was for that reason.
Spark out back then, though, wasn't it? It was spark out, like warehouses empty.
Yeah.
Like you'd be walking around thinking, "Wait, shut up! I can hear it. It's so weird. You run, just listen for the music because of all the derelict buildings. That's how it was back then, wasn't it?
It was, and back then it's funny where the Olympic stands today. Marshgate Lane, all those places there were all empty warehouses. That's where the Olympics was actually built. Again, I felt we gave sight to that early days. So yes, I did some parties. A few people were organising them. I remember a friend of mine, Bones. He'd done them. He brought in Andy Sweller. And he wanted to do parties. He used to be at a market stall at the time, was involved in the football, and not a problem, just do the parties. And sometimes you get raided, sometimes they won't get raided. So sometimes what we'd do is do parties together. So the three of us would be partners. I'd provide the sand, they'd try to, find a warehouse, give out the leaflets, we'd do that kind of thing.
So did you have something to do with Clink Street and all that then?
No, Clink Street was over the other side. On this side, the parties, when they first started...
He started at Clink Street Swallow, didn't he?
No.
Really?
No.
So they used to throw his name up, because I remember a couple of times I've gone over there and someone said this is Andy Swallow.
No, Clink was going a long time. Clink was...
that was 85, 86,
yeah, Clink was going back there. The original ones were like, Denny Rampley Dundasham, which was on Southwark, Tooley Street.
Yeah, Tooley
And,
Street, the Arch.
Yeah, and then Clink came a little bit after that. And there were places like Rave at the Cave, and there was that was Rave at the Cave. That was Elephant Castle. That's it. You got it. Place. And there were little places you'd go, and these were the very beginnings. But where the game changer actually came, because at the moment it was still going. It went a good run, then it was coming hand to mouth because the police were just smashing them, and promoters were getting more and more reckless, and it was like that. But where my fortune changed, and a lot of people's fortune changed, funny enough, was I'd set off to do a party. I'd had a friend that I met recently, funny enough, Wayne, who just got involved in the scene, and we were talking about the scene and stuff, and I said to him, look, we should do parties, because there's going to be money in this thing. And two of my other really good friends, there was Delsky and Abe's, Shakes.
Yeah.
So the four of us were like partners, and we were going to put on parties and stuff and do bits and pieces. And what was it? The first one we got was me and Wayne, actually, and Abe, I think, was involved. But it was down at Aldgate East. So Wayne found a warehouse. It had no banister, no fee, nothing on it. Anyway, we set the thing up, advertised it, got some flyers made down the road. We had to get the flyers made for the blues parties, 30 quid, I think it was, for 1,000, giving them outside the clubs every Saturday, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, the clubs were running. And thought, I've got the sound system, let's set it up and hope for the best. Had about 200 quid, bought soft drinks, do you know what I mean? Because even bothered buying beer. Had the thing set up, kept quiet on the night, waited, call them, they will come. They did. Started to get mobbed. I think Rave and Cave as well got closed down that night. Anyway, the place got packed. Never forget, police arrived. Wayne tried to front them, so he's put on his field, come to the front of the thing, and he's like, oh, sorry, officer, it's a video shoot, he was in early with a blag. Anyway, the fire alarm's gone off. So we're going, okay, just a minute, please. So we stood at the guy who got a hammer, ran round building, smashing the fire bells off of the walls. Had to come back downstairs, deruffled. No, I just had to turn the alarm off. That was an accident, do you know what I mean? Anyway, so from the early days, we were getting on the blag.
So right? He managed to blag it, did he, this time? Or?
Yeah, he blagged it, but then obviously the police see through it as well, because he was left there. There was a geezer at the door with him. His jaw was going, the sweat was dropping down his face. And it was like, all right, cool. The greatest thing was we'd done it, though. We managed to pull the party off, and that was the greatest thing, to get yourself in the game. And then we had that party. We then needed to find another warehouse. We were struggling to find somewhere. We went down one afternoon. We passed this place in Hackney Wick and saw some guys in it and thought, wow, what an amazing warehouse. Anyway, they obviously didn't want to, it was their warehouse, they were holding it for gold, but we needed a warehouse badly. So we thought, we're just going to have to keep looking. Anyway, Wayne Carlton, listening, says he's got a friend that he knows for years, Keith, found a warehouse, but we've got to bring him in to do the party with us. So anyway, we thought, okay, we're in the warehouse, we've gone to see it, it's the same warehouse that we saw where the people were in. Anyway, he'd somehow managed to get it, so it was okay. This was the birth of Leaside Road. Anyway, it was coming towards Christmas, so it was New Year's and Christmas Eve. So the first party we'd done, because we were doing parties with just me, Shakes and Delsky and Wayne, so we'd done the first party, the four of us, and Keith was involved. That was done Christmas Eve 1988, and that was great. Wasn't massive, but it was all right.
And what were the ones called? Sorry to interrupt.
This was Genesis at the time. This was Genesis where we started.
So Genesis was all of you rather than just yours. It was a group thing.
Well, yeah, it was Genesis. The name Genesis was born, I remember, me and Wayne, just before the party we done in Aldgate East. We were sitting and we were trying to get off a name. Wayne's favourite group was Genesis, Phil Collins, and I was my mum was very biblical and all that, and I had a Bible in my room, and I put the Bible on Genesis. I picked up the thing, and it's open. The first chapter said, "In the beginning," and it was in the beginning, right? And I thought, in the beginning, we're starting this. This is a sign. So we branded it Genesis. We went down to the flower shop. There was a picture of Zeus, the Greek god. We stuck his face on the thing, and we had a brand. And that was first party. But where we hit the jackpot was, I think it was the day after that party we'd done. we're in the warehouse cleaning it up. Geezer walks up. I recognised him straight away from the earlier parties, the earlier stuff. Posh guy. This was Tony Colston Hater. So Tony came in and said, "Look, you know, I've done a small little party because you've done a Apocalypse Now, which is a small one, and you started the first ever Sunrise." And he was like, "You know, great warehouse. You know, we should really look about doing something together in tandem." So we were coming up to New Year's Eve and thought, "Okay, let's go for it." So we joined up. So Genesis and Sunrise became a brand. And I'll never forget it. The warehouse was a huge warehouse, just literally ran the length of the road and wrapped the road. And we sat about New Year's Eve party. We opened up, and literally, you know, when I put my head around the door, actually getting to that was even more funnier. Because we had 2 parties here previously, the police and local was getting to know. So New Year's Eve, we're in the warehouse, straighten up again. Anyway, police arrive. They turn up and go, "Right, close it all down." But we legitimately thought it was a legal warehouse. We thought the person that had rented it to us owned the warehouse. So we said, "We ain't going to go nowhere. This is a fire risk." Anyway, he's gone. Brought back the fire inspector. Anyway, the fire inspector was pissed because he'd been pulled out of his Christmas party. So he's turned up, we shut us, because we had about 20, 30 bags of rubbish from the night before, tins, all black bags. So he took them with the doorman, thrown them all out the side of the door, literally, he couldn't even move with them, right? To clear the place, we've closed up the doors, the fire inspector's come, he's walking around the place, he's gone, "Look, they're going to have a massive party, thousands of people there tonight." He's gone, "It's just a fire risk, isn't it?" Fire inspectors look like that. He's opened the door. Thank God he didn't look around the corner. He's gone like that. God, they go, "Let them have their party. Perfectly safe." Police was fucking fuming, but he let us go. That night, boom, we banged it out. We had over 5,000 people, and that was the biggest event of that time, considering, you know, 1,500, 1,800 people was a good crowd.
Yeah,
prior to that.
5,000 is massive
big,
by anyone's
big
stretch.
bloody party, massive event. And mark you, out of the 5,000, God knows how many people were let in for free because everyone was your mate. But it was a big one. Anyway, we knew Sunrise was a great tool to bring in because they brought a substantial crowd, and their crowd were coming in from the West End, they were coming in from the suburbs. So it was a great move at the time. So it was like, okay, we've got this. So then we started to venture into the West End now. People have known about Genesis. So we thought, okay, let's use our heads. So we went to the WAG Club. We used to go as a regular. We saw a guy outside there, had a mobile cab thing, Jerry, and said, "Look, we're doing the parties. Why don't you come and outside the parties and do the cabs? Because people have been in nowhere." It was like, I said, one condition, you've got to give our flyers out to everyone that leaves the WAG and give them to your cab drivers who are in the West End. So, of course, it was perfect because all the West End people now know about Genesis. We had a regular venue.
Whose idea was that to do that?
Jerry. Well, I guess it was really mine because what I'd done was Jerry was outside the WAG. We all got to know, obviously, Jerry and that because he was a regular character guy. And he was good because of the mobile thing. So when I used to leave the WAG, I used to get the cab from him, you know. Yeah. And and that was it basically. So then he's serious with the flyers, giving them out. So it made sense. You could just give him a big box of flyers and he would take care of them.
Why I asked that, it was because all the raves I used to go to, I think, how do they always fucking get cabs here? Why have they always got, like,
that was the secret.
Always cabs, you know
that
what
was the key, yeah.
For years, I was always thinking,
and that was the key.
What the fuck? How do they get that sorted? Do you know what I mean? How do they not? And then you just think like there's always cabs. There's always cabs in the roads.
Right. That's what happened. That was how it happened. Mobile cab office. That's what we've done. And that was the first one, and it meant people knew they could get home, which was a great thing as well. Inadvertently, it became a real good sales.
We never knew where the party
was. So how are you going to get home?
Do you know what I mean?
So that was a big one.
Where the parties were, you had to meet up in the pub on a Friday, and then you get the location halfway through the night.
Lastminute.com,
Last minute, and then there'd be like convoys of people driving up the motorways or everywhere around. Like there'd be convoys all through London, like 40, 50, 60 cars, and then they started getting little minibuses. Do you know what I mean? And there was like proper coaches. Like, it was sick back in the day when it first started.
It was.
So you must have started seeing real good money at these times as well when you're putting on raves this size.
It was, we were starting to turn around serious money for young people, you know, but the money started to come later. The money came really from drugs because that is where the money really was. But doing parties as that group, the three of us, it was about just parties. It wasn't about the drugs. And we weren't doing drugs either. We were doing events, and we were making money from the drinks we had, from the numbers we had coming through the doors.
Yeah.
And that's what we were reliant on, you know. And don't kid ourselves, drugs had to be there, and we had to get people in there who would be putting drugs in that place, because the parties relied on the quality of the drugs inside there, believe me. But the following week, we thought, it's the first week of January, no one's got any money, you know, is it even worth opening? But we said, let's go for it. What happened? 7,000 people. It's the biggest party ever at that time. I mean, it was madness. I mean, literal madness. But what we realised we was doing was closing down the West End, because people now got to know about the regular venue that was sitting there, and rather than paying what was £15 admission to get into a club in the West End, and what was, I think it was £3 or £2 a drink, it was a lot of money for a drink. This was the way the West End worked. They stopped going to the West End and they'd go straight to the party. So this was causing problems with the club owners in the West End, because suddenly, for the first time, they was on, where's our crowds gone? Because they'd go to the West End first and go to the party afterwards. People then started to think, hold on, let's just go straight to the party. And then we started to get celebrity status. You know, Boy George was regularly there, Milli Vanilli, Pet Shop Boys. Celebrities were making a big deal over what we were doing. And then I remember New Year's Eve, I got a call from Lyndon, and he said, you ain't going to believe this. So what? He said, you're in M&E. He said, the music magazine, he said, you put you down as the biggest event of that this year. I'm like, what? Illegal Warehouse Party? This is the most respected magazine in the music industry. So then I knew we'd gone somewhere. We used to go into clubs, you know, you never paid for anything. You were straight with your VIP. You was living a mini celebrity life, and it was like, wow. Do you know what I mean? What's happened all suddenly? And then the bad news came, because bad news came when we were setting up to do the next one that week. The inspector came back and said, right, there's a thing here. You're illegal in this warehouse. It turned out the geezer that Keith had rented the warehouse from £500 a night was squatting it. So the legitimate owner got wind of this and didn't want nothing to do with any of this stuff. So there we were in limbo. But the funniest thing was actually this, and this is what happened. We then was desperate for a warehouse, and what ended up happening, I'll never forget that night, we complete limbo, and it was actually Andy Swaller and Danny Harrison that found us a warehouse. And basically they wanted, you know, to be part of this. Everyone wanted to be part of this. This was massive. And they found us a warehouse. I think it was in Canning Town. And what was strange was the police was actually outside the warehouse on Leaside Road giving out flyers for us with directions on it, because they didn't want fans of people turning up there just loitering. God. So they had 2 police cars, one at each end of Leaside Road, with our flyers with a map on the back telling them where to go. Priceless.
That's incredible story.
Priceless. And we had the party. Not as incredible though as the story at the warehouse in Canning Town. Because when we had the warehouse in Canning Town, what had happened was, by this time, Tony had taught Wayne how to really blag it. So what he used to do was create a contract, basically, or look like a contract. So you go in the estate agents, so look at some properties, get the letterhead, got the bill on top, use that as a letterhead, type that out to say you're having a music business party and you've done all this. So Wayne would put on his jacket and he's looking all flash and that, he'd go out to front the police. So I'll never forget, he's gone out to the front and that, the police inspectors had out, got all these people coming and going, and like saying it's a music business party for Sony, and like the coppers bought into it and said, like, got George Michael coming out. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, had the police parking cars, right? Plotted up, waiting for George Michael and Elton John's autograph. Anyway, that was the beginning of the fun episode, because that was a journey. And then we had a series of parties with Sunrise, and it was like a different venue every week. It was a case of finding the warehouse, kicking off the door, putting a padlock on it, and we'd be there Saturday night, bang. And it was a mad scenario. And what we'd done, without realising what we'd done, was we created a full fail-safe mechanism at the time, mobile phones were very rare. They were the state of the art, very few people had them.
Fucking massive.
Right.
That's a carry on your shoulder.
We used to have the mobile phone, right? And one of our pals used to move around with us, straight at the warehouse, and that was a guy called Paul Ryan, Scrap Iron Ryan, became a professional boxer years later. I think was he Commonwealth champion?
Yeah,
World champion,
yeah.
Yeah, Paul. So Paul used to go we used to have a meeting spot, Walthamstow Dog Track, when it was there. You had a big car park opposite, and the old Leaside Road venue we'd left. So what we'd do is Paul would be at Walthamstow Dog Track. He had a pager. So then what we'd do is when we had the warehouse, we'd set it all up. Everything was in there. We were there safely. We'd then phone Paul and tell Paul where the warehouse was. So what Paul was phoning, was page him. He'd go to the phone box outside the dog stadium, write the address down. He'd go back into the car park. He had one of them scooters. I think he might have tried to do knowledge as well at the time. And then he would literally take the journey to the warehouse with like hundreds of cars behind him. So it was a convoy, like you saw in the film, of cars travelling to the warehouse from two directions. So the police now would be at the back of the convoy. And of course, you're going through different areas as well, so you might move from different police stations, right? So they're trying to track us as we go, but then suddenly, when both points arrive, everyone just descends on the warehouse. So you've got hundreds of people, thousands of people now, all going into the warehouse. So by the time the police now is a call for their backup and for other officers to close it down, it's too late, because you've got so many people in the warehouse now. They're in a situation. If they tip these people out, what are they going to do with them? It's chaos. So they were stuck letting us fill the warehouse with people, but not only that, you couldn't descend them, so we had to naturally, organically let the warehouse empty itself. So throughout the course of that night, we would go on for hours upon hours upon hours until it left to the end, it drained its own way out. Anyway, it was almost a fail-safe situation that we had, and even to this day, the guy that was set up by Margaret Thatcher to create a pay party unit, Ken Tappington, to stop us doing the parties, he's been on documentaries. Yeah, and he's actually even said, it was genius how it happened, but it wasn't genius. It was all we could think on our feet, what we could do to get round it.
But when you think about it, though, right, like literally think about it, to get thousands of people without mobile phones and social media, what we got now,
I know,
to get tens of thousands of people or thousands of people into one location, one secret location, before the police raid it and shut it down, is an amazing feat in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's incredible.
And even going up the motorways, like there'd be convoys like miles up the motorway, like you couldn't get lost. And then you'd be driving around fields and you think, where is it? I can hear it. Stop.
Yeah.
Yes, this way. It's crazy.
And that's what it was, And it grew, as I said. And then it became
quick
different.
Well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Really quick.
It did. It was literally, in the space of 6 months, it just went from zero to hero. It just exploded.
It went from hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Because it was. I remember everyone was like, you go little. It was all their warehouses, 500-600 people.
That's right. Tiny ones.
300-400 people. And then 400-500 people, and then all of a sudden it was like thousands. Like you turn up and there's just thousands of people. Wow, like all these fucking gaps with floors on them, like. And obviously I was a little bit younger than Andrew and them lot, but when we used to turn up, I was always out of my nut anyway. So you turn up and there's just thousands of people everywhere, all wearing all mad clobber, flashing lights, flashing fucking wristbands and all sorts. You know what I mean? But it was a really how they used to do the parties was an absolute amazement. Do you know what I mean? And it was like they went on till 6 a.m. Like 6 a.m. Do you know what I mean? Like they'd shut them down rapid, but it was just a mad era, wasn't it?
It was insane. But the thing was actually, and there were two things that kind of spiked it. Number one, when we started to step up and really move forward, we had a security team that we put in place, and in a way it was quite insane because they were an amazing security team, and they were the Genesis 12, And that consisted of a group. One of our group was Carlton Leach, the guy that that made a couple of films about, and we had some good security, And basically, they were known as Genesis Security, but they became known as G-Force. A lot of them were, involved with football, dominantly ICF. So they had their own notoriety and, let's say, fame that went with them. They started to do other doors as well, and they were good doormen though. They were a very strong door.
In all fairness though, that football stuff, sort of the violence dissipated around them.
It all stopped. It all stopped. It
really did stop.
And that was the maddest thing about it, because these guys were hardcore football hooligans prior to this. But at our parties, you would have all the top Millwall boys, all the top West Ham boys, all the top Arsenal boys, and everyone will be sitting, drinking in groups, talking together. But on a Saturday day, and I've seen these turnouts, they'd go and they'd say West Ham were playing Millwall. They'd go over south, do a recce of where they're going to go in and out, the pubs they're going to smash, everything like that, and they would go over there and they step down in Bandit Country, and they would have it would be off. I mean, you'd have a full scale riot going, and bricks going through pub windows, people staring at each other with Stanley knives, full on madness. And on Saturday night, everyone's there dancing together.
And it was like mad, because there weren't many fights unless someone took a real liberty early in the day. Do you know what I mean? And then they'd have to have a straightener, because everyone else, no, let them have a straightener. You watch them all have a straightener, everyone will carry a raving.
Yeah.
It would get over the top.
It was a mad time. It was a mad moment in time, as I said. And,
when you think about it, without the raves, the football scene would have just escalated even worse, because it was getting to the point with the football violence around the late 80s or mid 80s, where it started getting serious. The violence really, like people, I think, late 80s, early 90s was the first killing, wasn't it, of the football.
Yeah.
And, was it Danzy, I think, someone like that got their first big lump, wasn't it? Someone got 10 or 12.
Well, they started to give them, Cash got a lump, he started to get bird, but the big bird started coming, as you said, later down. But when I look at it, I think to myself, I believe the government, they like to divide people, and the football hooliganism divided people. And I think when the party era came along, for the first time, people were actually getting on and talking to people from South East. So with the parties, as I said, it was becoming more of a cat and mouse game. And I remember one, because we had to front it out and we were really good at doing it, became real masters of the blag. And I remember after we got to give up the East Side Road and we were going from warehouse to warehouse, we finally found an estate agent who wasn't legitimately give us a warehouse, but for £500 he'd give us the keys to one, And I'll never forget, it was over in Edmonton. So we went there in the afternoon, the same team and all that. So we had the keys, we opened up and that, and got the guys in there, and they're cleaning up the warehouse. Do you know what I mean? They're sort of clearing all the floor. It was stored furniture, it was a storage warehouse, had beautiful stuff in there. So I said, listen, take everything, put it all down the back of the warehouse. So they were loading everything down in the forklift, I was moving the stuff, boom, 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 sweeping up now, and they're pissing around playing football and all that. Anyway, I've heard boom, boom on the door. So I thought it was one of the guys, Keith or Wayne or something, now has come to say something. So I've put my head around the corner, and it's got double glass doors. There's two police standing up with an old boy with a flat cap. Thinking, fuck. And they're like there looking at me. Right, that's it. So I walked up to the door, pulled the door, police jumped in, Giggs jumped in. What are you doing in my warehouse? So on the spot I've gone, what do you mean your warehouse? He's gone, my warehouse? I said, what are you talking about? My dad's bought this warehouse. So I gauged him and he's gone, you're Mr. Jenkins' son. As he's done that, I've like, yeah. So he's gone, you're not supposed to be here till Monday. I've gone, yeah, but my dad wanted to play straightened up and that. He's gone, what? So the police have looked at him now and gone, who? What? He's gone, Mr. Jenkins, his dad's bought this warehouse off me. So he walks into the main room now, they're playing football, everyone shit themselves to see the police. Like that. And he's gone, oh, what did you do? I said, we just be cleaning up, put all the stuff down the back of that. I said, just straighten up. So they're looking in amazement now, thinking any minute now it's all gone wonky. So he's gone, I said, you're a good kid. He said, my son, he says, lazy bastard, all he's doing is going to parties, right? So he goes, no way. Anyway, she's gone, listen, he said, there's a problem. He said, I've got a silent alarm. He said, you triggered the silent alarm. I goes, wow. He's gone, come out. So he's walked me into this room. He's gone, right, this is the combination. Do, in front of the police. God, if you have any problems, he said, call me. I said, thanks very much and all that. Anyway, the police has gone, so what? He says, yeah, he's supposed to be here. His dad's bought the warehouse. What? They've gone. Anyway, they scooted off. I thought, that's the closest shave you'll ever get in your life. So that night now, boom, the party's gone. I mean, everyone's come down, smashing anyway. I'll never forget, there must have been 200 police turn up that night because we've made a mockery of them. I've looked out the top window, I can see the old boy standing up with the police, going mad because he's been had, do you know what I mean, right? And I'm in there fuming. And I'm thinking, fuck, they're going to raid us because we've never seen them that aggressive before, do you know what I mean? Anyway, they're up there, they've got riot shoes banging and all that. I'm thinking, this is fucking really bad, right? So I've gone down to the door to security. They've gone like, look, they want to come in, the police, like, he wants to have a look around. So I had a good old strong door. And then Matthew goes, listen, we'll fucking have it with them. Do you know what I mean? Right at the end of the day, if it's like that, we'll have it with the police. And I'm thinking, fucking hell, we're already on top of the fucking list as the promoters who the police want, rewards out everything. Now they're changing the law, and this lot start fighting with the police. There's going to be bigger problems anyway. I said, look, we've got to let him in. Got to let him run and look. Anyway, we let a cozzer in. He's walked in the warehouse. It's not completely full yet, so he's sussed it anyway. He's gone back out, gone, right. He said, you close it down now, otherwise we're coming in. He done his recce. Anyway, so we've gone on a mic, look, we're going to have to close down. They're like, boo, Joe, boo, boo, boo. So we remember we've got to stop the thing. He's put on Kiara, Let Me Love You If You Like, da, 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 that track. Anyway, it's fucking just come up, the fucking place has started booming. And it was like, we're going to have a fucking party tonight, right? Anyway, it couldn't happen because good sense had to prevail, and that was the first one we broke. We had 13 parties on a run of successful events, and then that party, as I said, we let the crowd out the door, and we obviously slipped out with the crowd. But then after that, it was almost like the kiss of death, because everywhere we went prior to moving to the warehouse, they were there. Do you know what I mean? And the warehouse party scene then with Genesis started to get smaller, because you're doing parties, they're constantly getting raided. It brings it to the end.
There was a lot of political pressure at the time there. Raves were making huge...
I'll show you a letter from Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher herself wrote a letter to tell her and say, you're going to stop this lot. That was the Prime Minister herself. And they stopped us, But then Tony, fair play to Tony started to go into film studios, I think it was Liverpool Film Studios, and he started to build Sunrise brand Back to the Future, and then he started to do relatively legal parties, on sites, farm field, stuff like that. And during that summer, I'll never forget, because
Denzel have something to do with
Denzel's Dave's brother.
David and
Dave. Yeah, Dave. So Dave Roberts. So Dave come in. I'll tell you how Dave came in. Tony was our partner in that turnout, and more or less what happened was, when Andy and all the football lot kind of was sort of like starting to, slip into it, they were half sticking it on Tony. So Tony, being Tony, ran to Dave. So Dave then positioned himself, and then Dave become half a Sunrise. And then what happened was, there we went. So that was it. And then obviously, where Sunrise then actually grew at a massive scale over that summer.
That was 1989, wasn't it?
1990 that was. 1990. So that was the summer of 1990. So 89.
I missed that one. That was
a big one.
In the air
hangar. That was it. And what I'd done with that one, basically, the air hangar was the big one, because what it done, they had a Sun reporter in there, and the Sun reporter, when I forget that happened, and it was bang on the front page of the Sun. Now back then, 8 million people read the Sun newspaper. Right, that was big shit. It was big news. And you know that excelled Sunrise as a brand massively.
Yeah, massively. Because I remember after that, I was in Warren Hill when that happened.
Yeah, and that excelled Sunrise, and he had a great summer. But the whole scene blew up. Andy set up the radio station Centre Force. They were on the air. You know, you had other pirate radio stations as well. Then you had, you know, it was so influential. The BBC had banned acid house or dance music. I'll never forget that summer. Black Box released Right on Time, and consider it never got no airplay. It went to number one, and it stayed at number one. It held on there basically for weeks on end, and it was down to warehouse parties till what the music scene was doing in terms of warehouse parties. You know, unless they abided by what we were doing, you know, the music industry was finished really as such, because these were the records that were selling. BBC weren't playing them, so pirate radios were the ones that were playing them. Warehouse parties had been played at. So eventually, licensing laws were changed. You know, it was a lot of pressure, I think, from the breweries. The breweries didn't like the fact people didn't drink, and the fact that we were going through the night. So, in a very clever manoeuvre, some people like the Ministry of Sand, who had, you know, influential people involved with their scene, you know, posh people would describe them as, understood licensing laws, got a license and went on all night. You know,
you couldn't buy alcohol at first in the ministry, could you?
No.
So I remember that's what we used to go. We used to be able to take cases of champagne and get let in, you know, let us in cold.
But you know, in retrospect, that was, when I look at it, I think to myself, we started that, and what we should have done was, had I been wiser at that point in my life, you know, I'd be sitting here, and that Ministry of Sound brand would be called something else, probably Genesis would be ours. And we'd be sitting there with branded radios, television sets, merchandise, holidays, you know, CDs, box sets, and it would have been ours. But our attitude was typical East End boys. So when people said to us, look, you know, we'll put so much money into this and we'll buy a venue for you, it was like, what the fuck? We don't want you as our partner. You know, it's our thing. We don't want you. You know, when West End club owners used to come to us on a regular basis and say, look, I will back you. I will get you a licensed venue and be part of this, you know. But we thought we could have it all and it would last forever, which it didn't, you know. So when that came tumbling down, that was, you know, not an end of an era, because it then moved into the era of the super club, you know.
Yeah.
But the warehouse party scene, as I said, you know, from that 1988 to the beginning of the night, it was that summer of 88, summer of 1989. And it opened, you know, to 1990 was when it all came to a sort of closing down period, was the most amazing time in, you know, rave culture. And that was that point. And then came the second chapter in my life, you know, and after the parties had come to an end.
Before one of the last parties, did someone die in one of the parties or get killed?
No, that was all bollocks. We just put it in the book for good reading.
Yeah.
We did have a bad incident. That was up at a venue we had, Basildon Festival Hall, and we have our own people that do our security, and we have our own firm. And what had happened was, there was a team of security. The venue come with their own security. So the venue security basically were white boys, you know, thought they were very special and could have all that. And everyone was sort of peace and love, rave and all that, but there were some serious people there. You know, they weren't, even though they, you know, walking around with jeans and t-shirt and all this, they, you know, these guys would have it, properly have it. And the security stepped out of line. I think one of them tried to chin. Funny, because one of them chinned Chrissy Bramble and knocked Chrissy out cold on the floor, and that was the start of it. And then one made a swing for Wayne, and someone else, we both know, they grabbed hold of him. He used to have locks at the time, and they pulled him down the stairs. And in fact, so it was Fitzroy, and they grabbed Fitzroy. They dragged him Fitzroy down the stairs, and then all of a sudden, it just turned really, really bad for the security. Anyway, all I could see was people going in, ripping chair legs off. But I mean, they were going for it anyway. They made chase for the security. I remember one security running for his life. I could see it was a mob running behind him, going, the fucking ICF. And they were just trampling him down. And the geezer was running for dear life. But anyway, one of the storemen got seriously weighed in. I remember him getting his head smashed open with ammonia, getting poured into his eyes, getting Stalin knife ribbons, you know. And that was a bad incident, you know. It went against the vibe of acid house, peace and love. I describe it as the day the music died, you know. But yeah, that was definitely the day Genesis died, that was for sure.
And another thing, you said that there was obviously a need for drugs to be in the place for the parties to happen. Did that end up introducing you into the world of drugs through? Yeah,
of course it did, because what happened was when the parties came to an end, there was probably no one more connected than me to the scene. So it meant that every club, every other promoter I knew on a very, you know, senior level, because we could control that scene. You know what I mean? That's where we were at the beginning of it and throughout it. So I had, you know, friends, associates, people older than me who were involved in these, you know, and they had a great system in place. They were manufacturing them, you know, and they manufactured one particular brand which became a very popular area of that time. And basically they said, look, you know, you've got every contact that's possibly needed, you know, even though they was getting doormen in places and they had certain things in place, they never really had what I had access to, which was the whole of the West End and the whole of the super club scene. And I said, okay, you know, we can talk about it. We sat down, we had a meeting, and we kind of said, look, yeah, I can do something. And I pulled together what I thought were about 12 main guys that I knew who were big in the game and were moving huge amounts, used to come to the party, stuff like that. So I was offered a price, and I worked out, I was playing about, I think at the time pills were incredibly expensive. I think they used to sell in the club, I suppose, for about 15 quid. And
what year?
1990.
Yeah.
Or maybe a tenner. I used to base the price of the pills, I'd see what they were, right? They used to work at the Doves, right? You used to buy them in the bags of 5,000, right? And I used to buy them for $6.25 a pill for 5,000. And they were selling the clubs, I think, for a tenner at the time. These were Doves.
I think that was a bit later than like the tenners. I think 1989, 1990, there was still 15, 20, between 15 and 25 quid.
Could have been. They were a lot of money, you know.
These times, these were pills. Well, people tell me these were.
They were real pills. Yeah, they were serious pills.
You do one pill every night, and that's...
they were serious pills. These were the real McCoy, you know.
Well, no, tell a lie. I'd say the maximum I ever took when it was Callies and things like that was 4. Yeah, and he was over, I'd say 95, 96, 97, they got a little bit weaker.
Yeah, they diluted them down, But those pills were the original pills, and I remember
Callies, mate.
I used to get them delivered somewhere, and they used to be like bags like that, and they were basically 5,000, and you had cotton wool at each end of the bag, you know, because of the breakages and all that, but still used to get loads of breakages in them. And what I used to do was, it's funny, the geezer we were talking about still was cars. I used to have him and a couple of others at a place I used to have, put size safe house, used to have them like counting the pills. So we used to weigh them, but they realised that in the 5,000 you might have 100 broken ones, but they used to count, used to weigh them. We used to get the pills, used to weigh them, and so that's 5,000, it make 5,100, and you have breakages. So what would happen is they realised they were counting them. If they produced 5,000, that was good, but they nick 100 for themselves, legitimately, because I didn't question it. Not question it. So it went from a stage where it was probably starting off that, you know, with, I think I started off like 10,000 pills, and we got to that stage within a period of 6 months. We were getting like 300,000 pills we were going through, you know, and that's like on a weekly basis. You know, and that's literally, I suppose, we had about 60% of drug takers, those pills went through.
And so this period there, did you stop putting on the parties?
I'd stop the parties.
Sack that off.
So the pills were now going up to Liverpool, Manchester, London.
And this was your only profession at this?
This was a professional drug dealer at this stage, yeah, you know. And that was it. And that was it. It then became the super clubs all started opening. You know, they were opening in Liverpool. They were starting to boom. And it was money. It was serious money, more than ever seen with the warehouse parties. And the fact that I had taken pills, I didn't really see anything wrong with it. I didn't see perhaps what it was going to do down the road. I'd done it and I enjoyed it. The fact that I had so much dispensable income, so much money there, you know, was a great buzz. But ultimately, I was making other people rich. Because even though I was making 50p a pill and still coming out with huge amounts of money every single week and every single month, the people who were already making it were the ones that were importing them. And that, I thought, is something at some point I'm going to have to do.
I can just imagine the heads up thinking, you passed all that money over, man.
That's what it was.
Do you know what?
That's what it was.
I'm going to do this myself.
And that's what it was. And that's what it was. And that's what it was. It was handing all those huge bags of money. So when you're pulling out 50 grand, 100 grand for yourself, even that's a lot of money to be taken weekly at a very young age, you're giving over millions of pounds.
Yeah. And that's, remember I was saying to you before about...
Seen a lot.
Yeah, it's like, you only realise your value, but once you've done, like you think, I'll give them 4 million quid, I'll give them 2 million quid, or I've had a couple of 100 grand. Fucking hell. Do you know what? I've got to do better, I've got to do more, do you know what I mean? Like, it's fucking nuts when you look at what people get and what the road gets. Like, it's...
The balance.
I was at a much lower level than you guys at points. I made absolutely nothing from what I did.
You probably took zero. Yeah, you probably gave it to your friends and took them and stuff like that as well. Yeah, because most people that sell drugs tend to sell them to their friends, their social dealers. Years ago, the acid house party scene actually changed the concept of drug dealers. Drug dealers back in the 70s, early 80s were drug dealers. They were specifically done that. But during the acid house party scene, you know, the plumber, the builder, the post office guy, he was a social drug dealer, because what he used to do was he wanted his own pills for the Saturday night himself. So he'd buy 15 or 20 to get his 4 for himself for nothing. And advertently, when he started to do that, he realised I can do this, then he's going to get, okay, I'll go and get 50, go and get 100. So the scene created thousands of drug dealers.
Terrible.
It was another, you know, destruction.
Of what we got today, isn't it?
It was another form of destruction. Yeah. It taught anyone to sell drugs, And this is, I reflect back on all these things and think, had I not done all them parties, had I not, you know, done that route, there'd have been God knows how many thousands and less drug dealers out there.
Because when you think about it, that's how it all started, really, wasn't it?
It all started there.
From there, mate.
People didn't sell people didn't sell puff socially. People didn't sell close aid drugs socially as a sideline. They were drug dealers.
So Chris, right?
Yeah.
Chris, right? Burglar. I used to give him cars and he used to give me gear. But I was 14. Because we used to get him so many cars that he couldn't pay us. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, no, you said you wanted these many motors, but you know when people talk, well, we want 10 motors, son, and we need four BMs, 4 Golfs, right? You go, all right, sweet, here's a list. All right, sweet. Tomorrow morning, I'm like, mate, I've got you them things, you know. They're like, what? There's one, and then the others, then got to go get cab back and drive. They're like, fuck. So where's my money? They're like, well, I weren't expecting them all today. Do you want a bit of that? What's that? Oh, that's ease. Oh yeah, my pal's saying them. How much is it? So you get loads of these, loads of bits of snip for the motors, and that's how I became. I wasn't a dealer. Like I keep saying, even like I used to get paid and then say, yeah, can you do these, and you go, yeah, I'll do them. I say, right, just get me X amount back for them then, because it's just my money for the motors. And then I grew with the trade by going on the vans. And I couldn't take my money. I couldn't leave it indoors, because if I got nicked, my whole family would take all my money. I couldn't leave it in my friend's house because they'd spend it. So how can I do? I know what I'll do. Let me buy a bit of gear and lay him on a bit of gear, and then my money's there, my gear's there, sort of thing. So the social element of drug dealing like rippled into like a whole generation of kids not committing crime but selling drugs, and that's where I believe the problem started within the criminal fraternity, because prior to that, the criminals had a trade.
Yeah.
You had the drummers, you had the oysters, you had the pickpockets, you had the fraudsters, you had the robbers, and then you had the armed robbers. Right? That's what you had. And everybody was their little sections, do you know what I mean? And everybody went out the weekend and drunk. But then when the acid rave party started happening, everybody just started trading kit for money and then laying on everyone's gear.
It became currency. Yeah. So drugs, as he said, became currency. So people would swap drugs for goods, and I mean everyday goods, you know. And that was when it became a form of currency, and people were doing it quite blasé, you know. And what he's just said is 100% right.
The ripple effects of
the ripple effects were the actions were, and that's what it's been. I've looked at it throughout my life, and it's been, you know, what I thought was harmless has had serious effects on thousands, millions of people.
Well, that's what made me realise in 2015, right? The penny dropped with me in 2015 with my son's friend. I didn't know it was my son's friend, because all the thingy devices, right? And then this cunt owed some money, so I had to get him a little bit, or taught a lesson. And I found out it's my son's mate. And that's when I thought, wow, I'm responsible for all this bullshit. I can't do this no more. And that's what made me come off the road. Because it ain't until something catastrophic happens that you actually look and reflect. And then when you're honest, like, you wouldn't be on this journey now if you never had empathy or heart. Do you know what I mean? Do you understand? Like,
$1,000,000%.
Because me and Andrew have been connected indirectly
over
since I was 13, 14
years,
years of age. Do you understand? But we both met organically when we both
at the right time.
At the same time. At the same time, though, it was like you got out of the shovel, didn't you?
Yep.
And then we met as soon as you come out of the shovel about a year later, and it was like, oh, you. And I'm doing this. What? I'm doing that. Shut up. Like, fuck. Is that what you're doing? Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then when I met Andrew, I said, look, I can't have it for anybody, because obviously when I first met him, I thought, well, wherever he was, there's no way in a million years he's not at it. So I said, look, I can't really get involved because I need everyone around me with 100% clean hands. And he's like, that's what I need. I'm on a licence and this can't happen and that can't happen. I was like, fuck, this is meant to be. So in 2015, I see our stars aligning for the right reasons, because we both realised at the specific time in the universe the ripple effects of our previous actions and what they're creating, and we didn't want to be part of that cycle anymore. That's what I felt anyway.
No, 100%, definitely. I mean, it was said, had at that stage we'd linked at any point, devastation.
Well, if you've
would have been devastation.
So think about it, right? I was game enough and hard enough, right? Because from 18, 19 years of age, I'll put it out quickly now. I had a row with his security firm. I mean, and stood up, got chopped up, got done up, but I stood up to the point where I got recognised as being someone of a certain standard within the violent world, right? And if we'd have linked, and I'd have said, oh, give 100 bits, give 200 bits, because there's no way in a million years you would have, I wouldn't give it to him, because he would have thought, yeah, well, work with him, he's proper. But then giving me the resources to become a multi-millionaire back dangerous. Dangerous. Mate, I was a Tasmanian devil just on a couple of grand. Do you know what I mean? So give me a few million quid. I know now, if I'd have had millions of quid back then, the ego I had, there would have been a lot more devastation than there was, even though I weren't as financially stable as I wanted to be. Do you know what I mean? If I'd have had millions back then, fuck me, I don't know what would have happened, or where I'd be now. Do you know what I mean? But I know I wouldn't be out on the road or alive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I knew that I would have been, because I would have just, $1 million back in the day, in my head, I would just tell myself, do you know what, give me $5 million, I'll iron them all out and I'll take over, I'll beat them out. So that was my mindset, because I was wanting to be the biggest, baddest villain on the planet. So the ripple effects of actions, and then looking back retrospectively, like everything in my life has happened for a specific reason. Like I got shot in 2008, so I could do what I'm doing in 2015.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know what I mean? And now we're here in 2020.
Journey, innit? Yeah.
People wouldn't even believe that I'm legit because of where I come from, and him being legit being what he's been involved in. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They wouldn't, like, us two together, like, it wouldn't have been heard of back then.
No good. There's no way they'd suffer that. It's that hard. I mean? Yeah, there we are. Real. Basically, towards the end of that year, I'll never forget, I was planning to go for a holiday, just a general holiday, and have a break, but he didn't get to that. One night I was out somewhere, and I got a phone call, and they said it was morning about 5 o'clock. Most people's house. Said, listen, your safe house door's just gone through. The gate's gone off of it. There are police outside of it, and don't go near there. So I thought, fuck, serious situation. I was sitting round someone's house, as you do, been out all night drinking. You can't quite get your head round what they're trying to quite say. Anyway, I sent someone by there to have a look. Anyway, they said, look, serious thing. There's doors gone. They've questioned people either side, and they're looking for you. So I was like, wow, big problem. Anyway, it was funny enough. Chris called Chris, said, look, got to get out of the country. And at that time, you used to have a passport you could get from the post office. And what it done was it meant you could travel in Europe, and you could go there basically 12 months, that's it. Anyway, Chris said to me, look, you can use my name and you can get one of those. So I thought, okay. So I went to the post office, gave him a picture of my picture, went and got one of those little 12-month passports, as he said. Went to a friend's house, said, look, collect up what money you can for me. I'm going to have to go on a long holiday. Now, I was planning to go to Jamaica, but the problem was my actual real passport hadn't arrived. It was in the Petty France passport office. So I thought, okay. So anyway, I later that day booked a flight, a bag of money, flew from a local airport to Charles de Gaulle in Paris. No preparation. Got a taxi to take me to the best hotel, to a place called Hotel California. Ironic. Anyway, I arrived at Hotel California. Nice little hotel, got a suite there, sat back there. Anyway, for the first few days, used to go to the Café de Paris shopping thing every day and behave like a tourist. After a week, I then thought, I've got to try to now think of a plan of what I'm going to do, because I can't be sitting there forever. So it was a question of, I have to go further afield. France ain't far enough.
So it was a serious situation that you were running away from.
Very serious situation, yeah. There's a huge amount of drugs were found, and it would have caused me very, very serious prison sentence.
Financially secure at that stage?
Well, yes and no. I was, but like every person that's involved in those drugs, you've got a lot of money, which is laid out. And the problem is, once you're gone, so are the people who owe you money. And I did have
house busted, obviously, hurt you financially.
And I did have thoughts. Maybe it was one of those people that had taken a lot of product from me, set that in motion for me, because that commonly happens in that business.
That's already. That's one of them things.
Commonly happens,
People wish, don't they? For
yeah.
If they don't do it,
that's right.
Sometimes
people hope. Like, I'm gonna put it this way, people bail gear, and then they hope you get nicked.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's obvious.
People say
it happens. People do it all the time. It happens.
Yep.
So it wouldn't surprise me that someone that he was working with can give it up anyway, just to get out of fucking.
And to also take the effectively the network, because it's a valuable network, and if someone's removed from it, someone has to supply it.
It's good for you guys. Who obviously people who've been in the game for a long time, going deep and talk about the mistrust and.
But it's all about that.
There's no loyalty in that game.
There ain't no loyalty at all.
There is none.
And this is how deep it is, yeah. Like, I'm not saying it happened on this occasion, right? But what had happened on other occasions that I was involved in, like, I know you're sending him grub, right? And me and you have got a wicked relationship. He gives me the ump, so then I'll say to you, where are you sending it? Come, let's teach him a lesson, man. He's a fucking facey little cunt. And then you go, Marv, allow him. I say, no, come on, man, please. And you go, all right, go on then. Then you let me know where you're dropping it. I'll rob it. He gets his gear taken and comes back to you and says, what? So you say, well, you got to work it off, son.
I've seen it happen to one of my friends.
It happens to everyone.
Flat. He sent a driver to the guy.
Yeah, it's all.
The guy ended up having a meeting with his mate, and the other guy said, no, this guy's a fucking prick. Yeah. They robbed the driver there and then the spot. Well, mate's gone, suddenly he's fucking 20 grand in debt.
It's a dog-eat-dog business.
With his coup, what's more likely happens, someone's got a parcel of pills, Fuck, we can't get rid of this, that fucking cunt serving them all up. I'll get into him, see who's doing, see what's doing what, see where their slaughter is, see what this is. I'll tell you what, hello mate, yeah, there's a load of gear down here, and then they put the door off, and then he's out the game, so then Marcus opens up for the other punters. That's
what it was.
And that's all it is. It's just a fucking slag.
That House of Cards thing, isn't it, as well?
Dog eat dog, and that's the reality of it.
And it's dog eat dog and dog snitch on dog.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? Only 2% of that world don't snitch.
Yeah.
Only 2%. Right. The rest of them are at it, mate.
Of course they are.
Trust me, the rest of them are at it. I was involved with some of the biggest villains in London, mate, and they ready-eyed us. Do you understand? They ready-eyed us. I know people that ready-eyed their son-in-law.
Explain what ready eye is to him, so as he's aware what ready eye is. Right. Ready eye is
set up, yeah.
It's a set up, anyway. Right, okay,
they get set up. Like, I know people that have been set up to be killed by their own people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I know people that have been set up to be robbed by their own people, just to teach someone a lesson.
Yeah.
Or, if I'm nicking too much money and I'm getting in front, they'll say, you got to clip that cunt, if he gets X amount, we're all going to be in trouble. So I'll tell you what to do, set him on him. And they just set you up. And then they come to where they love you when you're lying in hospital. Do you know what I mean? It's all dogs, mate. They're all dogs. The whole world is set up. That whole world is set up so the people on the street get used as cannon fodder, so the people at the top can live decent. That's all it is.
Yeah. So that was that. And as I said, so I was there in Paris and awaiting a passport. After, I think it was about 2 months, 3 months, close to 3 months, I was sitting there. I managed to get a passport from out of Petit France, and someone who was willing to fly over to Paris and delivered a passport to me. So had the book. I was just comfortably enough out of the zone. The next journey then was to America. So I had family and friends in America. I flew into Miami, and then I settled in Fort Lauderdale. Settled in the States for about 5 months, but the ultimate destination was going to be Jamaica, Then after that period of time, it was my mum, funny enough, she went there to Jamaica ahead of me to make preparations that, I could be taken care of. I said a great network of extended family who were quite influential in Jamaica.
And had you been travelling there as a child?
As a child we used to go regularly. I'd been there for a number of years. I'd been more, going with my mates and doing that whole thing rather than going to my spiritual cultural home. And I arrived in Jamaica and I was basically told, right, just be quiet, keep yourself cool, don't do anything to bring attention to yourself. You're going to be with your family now. And I had some, family who were very, influential people on the island politically.
Ironically enough, that's when I started hearing about him. that's when I heard about Adam Pritchard.
So it didn't go to plan to keep your head down.
It went probably as far from plan as you could imagine. So I arrived in Jamaica and I stayed with some relatives who were, quite good circle. And in no time, I was keeping my head down, but they then was encouraging me, you can't be sitting there, you need to be going out and enjoying yourself and da-da-da. So they then started to introduce me to people of my age who were parents of politicians and things like that. So then I started to go out, but of course...
upper circles as well, straight away.
Yeah, but you're putting let's just put it like this. I remember one day someone telling me I wanted to put a kid from the street into a record company, to teach him the skills. And my friend said to me, you mad? It'd be like putting a wild animal in your living room. Well, in that case, me going out there, I was a wild animal. And I was put around relatively civilised people. So I was going out, but I was on a very mad mission. And it got to the stage, every week I'd be going out, I'd be drinking, be getting in fights, physical fights, constantly, week in, week out, because I'm bored. And I've got that, that spirit to just, be disruptive. Anyway, they thought, we're going to have to calm him down. So they introduced me to a girl, a friend I knew, whose father was Deputy Prime Minister. And we got on okay and stuff. Anyway, one thing sort of, led to another. And she fell pregnant with my oldest son, Giovanni. But still, I was very rebellious and still very disruptive. And I was out all the time. And during that time, I was a womaniser. And I saw someone else that I liked. It was Erica. She was just come back to the island. She'd been Miss Jamaica, and she came fourth in Miss World and was Caribbean Queen. So she was quite a known person on the island. Me being me at that time, I liked her spirit. I wanted to be around her, and she also fell pregnant. So there I was, this guy that's to keep a cool profile, going around fighting constantly. 2 women pregnant. One's a Miss Jamaica, the other one's, a high-ranking politician's daughter. So not only am I in that scenario, within that circle, I'm also getting snapped by the local papers because it's half a celebrity turnout.
And he's wanted in England.
And I wanted in England. So.
And how are your finances at that time with them?
Well,
are you still?
I actually, believe it or not, decided I was going to actually do something legitimate. And legitimate wasn't 100% legitimate, but I realised that cars, because I saw the cars that were selling down there, they were like BMWs, Mercedes, for that. So when I looked at it, I realised if you bought a used car here, a Mercedes or a BMW, because of the politicians that people had around me, they wanted them sort of cars, and their kids wanted them sort of cars. The reason why they were so expensive out there was because of the duties. So the duties were 260% on some of them cars. So if a car was, say, £10,000 here, you'd have to pay another £26,000 in duty. Yeah. So the car would come in at 36 grand. Anyway, it didn't take long. I had good contacts with people with cars down there, as we know, right? But then on top of that, I then ended up taking over the office of my friend's father's office, and he was a sitting minister in Parliament and government. So I was landed in New Kingston in this office, and would disguise to create a car business. And one day the cleaner, she said to me, her son works at the Wolf, I should meet him if I'm going to be importing cars. So I said, the Wolf, the Wharf, yeah? Okay, right, the docks.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I thought,
ports, mini
the
ports.
ports, yeah. So I thought that's great. So anyway, I met him, came to the office, was talking about it, and said, look, he said, you know what? With a few alterations, I can, adjust the duties on these cars. So I thought, okay, what do you rate? He said, well, basically, we value them off of a certain book. He said they're valued on mileage, they're valued on certain conditions, all these sort of things. If you're able to do something ingenious with them, I can reduce the duties. Anyway, I figured, well, this ain't really hard. So I had someone clock them. So they'd take the clock up to ridiculous mileage. He'd take the 4 tyres off, put 4 old worn tyres on there, stick those in the boot of the car, the new ones, take the pedals off, put some old fucked up pedals on the pedal things, and he could then effectively skim, substantial duty. Yeah. So I'd be nicking on a car I could buy down there for 10 grand, I'd be clearing the full 36,000, but the reality was that it cost me a score, so I was making 16 grand on every car. Yeah. And that's a lot of money, because you're still talking about over 27 years ago.
Yeah, a lot of money if you did it today, wasn't it?
Correct. So basically, I fell on my feet because I had customers who were buying the cars, who wanted the cars, and I had a way of getting the cars into the island at such a reduced duty.
Well, then, was that Wolf the Tivoli Garden lot?
No, that was various people control Wolves at different times. Tivoli's quite near to the Wolf, so there are people, from Tivoli that do have access. But everyone with the right connections has access to the Wolf in different capacities to either get things into the country or out of the country on different levels, But at this time, the level that I was doing it with the cars, because there was enough money in that, and it seemed like a legitimate business to the naked eye. So that's what I'd done. I set up a company called Select Motor Company, imported cars, bought a house up in Stony Hill, and lived a relatively respectable life for a while. Then I moved to Ocherous, which was on the coast, north coast, because I thought I enjoyed it.
Sandals, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
I thought it was a nice place to be, and I thought to myself, it's nice. You wake up every morning, there are tourists moving around, everything seems pretty pleasant.
It's nice in Ocherous,
and I liked it, and I set up a car rental business there. So the car rental business was quite good. You were in as tourists every day, and I felt great. You woke up in the mornings. Stefan was born, he was a toddler, and I felt quite good. And then I decided I was going to get involved in motorbikes, because I could rent them as well. So where it started to tumble, I had a friend down there who was buying me the bikes and sending them up to Jamaica. The other fella we'd mentioned, who you said to me, should you mention in the thing, mixed race fella.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So it's just send him and get me bikes anyway.
Buying them or?
Well, I thought he was buying them. But anyway, right?
You didn't need to know about that.
So, anyway, on one of the shipments of bikes, basically what had happened was customs had ran the numbers and found some stolen bikes on there. So that started a chain of events, which was unnecessary for me, because we'd done it, broke the car bracket, so as I couldn't no longer bring the cars in, and in consequence, the bike rental business was down the drain.
And you were wanted at all this time anyway, still back in Britain.
So I was backpedaling a little bit, and my marriage was starting to get a bit shaky, and then I had someone on the where I lived on a private estate. I had someone there. He was a Canadian guy. He enjoyed a drink. He was very disruptive, and he would drink, and he would then be very loud. He'd be abusive to most of the residents, driving around in his pickup truck. Even though I was trying to keep a very respectable sort of forward, this guy that has settled and is a family man and whatever.
Businessman. Yeah,
things were becoming a bit, tight for me. My temper was getting a little bit more drawn to it, and one day he had an argument with him. He took his pickup truck, dumped a load of rubbish on my front lawn. Anyway, I was bad. It was bad timing, really. So I'd said to the guard, "Look, who done that?" He said, "Dick done it." He called him Dick. His name's Richard. And I said, "Listen, when he comes to the gate, do me a favour, don't open the gate, just, let me know." So later that day, I heard boo, boo, boo on the gate, bibbing. Of course, looked out the window, because my house was by the thing. I saw him there, trying to leave the gate, but the gate's down. So I took a pickaxe handle, went out to the van and weighed him in front of all the neighbours, residents, Oh, no. Anyway, people weren't that upset actually, because he was a real pain in the arse to everyone. But after a week or so, one of the local police, Robbie, he came back and said, "I was really sorry, Mr. Pritchard, but I've got to charge you, arrest you, because you've done this in plain sight and daylight, and it can't. He's got my boss and everything. He was trying to let it go away, but it can't go away." So anyway, I thought, okay. My marriage had now deteriorated. Erica left with my son. They went to Miami, and I thought, okay, the case was pending. Thought I'm going to go back to England, try my chances. Anyway, it had been a number of years, over 6 years. I flew back in. There was no problems. The flames had quietened down on what I was wanted for, as things back then used to have a habit of disappearing from police stations. And I was fine, but I had to go back to court in Jamaica. So I found myself in this pattern. Every time I went back, they were adjourning it for 2 weeks. So literally, it was like a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Until one day I went back and I was tired of it. I called a solicitor. Said, "Listen, what will happen if I plead guilty to this?" He said, "Well, it's probably a fine, you know. I said, okay, well, the fine's, I'll do the fine. So I went to the magistrate court. Anyway, he said, you know, just thing, he's adjourning it again. I said, no, not adjourning. I said, I'm pleading guilty. So the magistrate looked at me, so you're pleading guilty? I said, yeah. He said, it's malicious wounding. So I said, yeah, I'm pleading guilty on the basis of the solicitor. Anyway, he's gone remanded in custody. So I thought, what has just happened? Anyway.
It's like karma, really, though, isn't it?
Karma comes back round at you. Whatever you do, you will not get away with.
No,
that's the reality.
You admit karma and then it comes back to you. Do you know what I mean? You pay for what you do in life.
Unfortunately, well.
So I ended up in remand in Jamaica prison. That wasn't a nice place to be.
No.
Place called Not Bay. Lock up.
Sweating.
When you arrived there were no beds because it's remand, so there was bits of newspaper on the floor. Yeah. And that's where you slept. You
was
left
it
your
30
trainers.
man a cell and all that?
12 man a cell, 7 by 7.
I thought remand prisoners were going to have it better where they weren't convicted yet. But
So basically, I was
you ain't got
there.
no money, you don't eat.
Correct. Yeah.
You ain't got no money, you don't eat.
Yeah.
I've been in where is it? Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And I was banged up in there. Yeah. And if you don't got no money, you ain't eating. But the good thing about it, they go out shopping for you, don't they? If you give them money,
That's right. Yeah. Kentucky, all stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
So so that was a thing, and then obviously I was in remand, not the greatest place to be. Was one particular incident, I'll never forget it, because horrendous condition. Like I've never seen a prison like it in my entire life. I remember there was another remand centre that like 2 weeks before this happened. I remember it was on the local radio where they said 12 people had died in the cell because basically guards forgot to feed them or give them water. Yeah, can you believe that? And they were left in there.
It happens. Don't get it twisted, it happens.
And they left in there basically. They were drinking their own urine. Yeah, I know. And they died of suffocation.
how long were they in there for?
Over a week.
But the heat.
Incredible.
The heat with no water and no food.
Yeah.
It just eats you alive.
So knowing this, I'm now on remand in Jamaica prison. Not a great place to be.
Regretting your decision.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is, isn't it? Life is full of regrets. It's regrets. Got it. So anyway, cut a long story short, you leave your trainers outside the cell. You go in the cell. You sleep on the floor. Blah blah blah. You got a horrendous toilet which is caked with.
Just was it a hole on the floor? Or was it
No, it's a toilet, but you can't go near. It's covered in shit, basically. You've got a little hole in the wall, which is the shower with a drip coming out of it, and you know that's your facilities. So you go out an exercise yard, little tiny yard to walk around. You go back in the cell. Anyway, I've come out of the cell. No trainers. Hold on. With my trainers.
Here we go.
See this old pair of scruffy trainers sitting out there. Thinking, hold on. Anyway, gone on the yard, bang. There's a dread with my trainers on. So I'm thinking now, this can only go one way.
It's only going one way.
I don't get them trainers. I'm finished in this gaff.
Victim,
right? You've got it. You've got it, and the fact you got it, right?
And he's
must
English.
be discrimination.
And he's English.
You've got it, and I'm English. Listen,
English.
It was the full deck, right? It's do or die. So I thought to myself, right,
Gotta have it, man.
gotta go.
Gotta go.
So I thought, right, I'm gonna have to get this cunt because he's bigger than me when he's most vulnerable. So what I done was, I went to the yard, got a couple of rocks, put them into the sock, gone back in there. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna lay weight. So I lay weighted him for when he's gone into the shower. Anyway, so I've had step in there, so I've coshed him up with the rocks in the socks. Anyway, they took me out. Now they put me to another cell, which was a single cell beside that. So now, talking about another charge, and I'm on remand, and also the person who was in that cell before had chicken pox.
Oh.
So I've now gone into a cell that's got chicken pox.
Have you had chicken pox before at this point?
No, until that point.
Oh, God.
Right. So anyway, I've ended up there, and I thought to myself, I've got court coming up. I've now had an outburst of chicken pox. potentially looking at another
horrible.
charge,
Not going to help the sentence.
and going to get sentenced on this one because I know every time I could get 2 years for malicious wounding. And the next place you're going to is penitentiary, which is not a place you want to go to. By the grace of God, my auntie came like a knight in shining armour. She'd obviously known one of the magistrates who drank in her bar, so she was able to pay him off. So when it went back to court, I got a fine of $120,000, but they let me go. And that was the experience of Jamaican prison. And I came back to England, and at that point, any normal person would have just,
sacked off the dodge.
Called it a day. But I went back and I kind of I did mellow out a lot. I had chilled out, but I decided I wanted to go back into the music industry. And a friend of mine had come to me and said, look, he said, it's a two-spoke thing. He said, look, I want to do something in Jamaica. He said, I know you've got all the contacts out there. Can you arrange something on a plane? So I said, it's possible. So anyway, I went and met with him and his partner, and they were doing a festival at the time. We literally just imported tons of weed. I was shot through the head, put in a boot of a car, set on fire. They had the biggest drug case in British history with no one convicted.